Okay. Let's go to Ephesians chapter 6. So like a fool, I decided I was going to try to teach the armor of God this morning, and that's what we're going to take a look at. So in case anybody didn't know, we all have a metaphorical target painted on our backs, because when we believe Romans 10:9, we step right into the middle of a spiritual war. In case we were unaware, God has an archenemy. We know him by the devil, or Satan, or Lucifer, the serpent, Beelzebub, the dragon, if you really want, whatever, have at it. And he's diametrically opposed in everything that he does to God and Christ. We know this from John 10:10. The thief cometh not but for to steal and to kill and destroy, but I, this is Jesus speaking, am come that they might have life and that they might have it more abundantly. So these two totally opposite forces. And when we believed, we chose a side, and now we also have an enemy. So let's just read verses 10 through 13. Finally, my brethren, be strong in the Lord and in the power of his might. Put on the whole armor of God, that ye may be able to stand against the wiles of the devil. For we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against principalities, against powers, against the rulers of the darkness of this world, against spiritual wickedness in high places. Wherefore, take unto you the whole armor of God, that ye may be able to withstand in the evil day, and having done all, to stand. Stop there. So we'll get into the individual elements of the armor of God in a minute here, just an introductory, and in coming weeks I want to go into the individual items in more detail, but we'll just do a quick summary for now. So looking at these individual verses, there are a few things we need to see. First, verse 10. Finally, my brethren. So this is the conclusion of the book of Ephesians that we've read. So finally, after all this stuff that I've already told you, referencing the book of Ephesians, be strong in the Lord and in the power of his might. So to be clear, there is another option, which is to be strong in our own mighty power, as it were. I like to think I'm pretty strong. I can do like 50, 60 push-ups, 40-pound dumbbells. I was giving Lexi a piggyback ride yesterday. Yeah, we're good. Fortunately, it doesn't quite work that way. A couple things to note. First off, physical strength is different from spiritual strength, and we'll see the difference between flesh and blood and fighting against the spirit here in a moment. But also, we're talking about going to war against the devil, the one who declared war on God and had Jesus Christ crucified. And in an event like that one, you're probably going to want to take in the biggest guns that you can afford. And those are going to be God's, not your own biceps, much to my dismay. Anyway, 11. Put on the whole armor of God, that you may be able to stand against the wiles or the schemes of the devil. So the Greek used for the whole armor is saying like every last piece without exception. You can't leave anything out. But everything that he's about to give us here, you got to put it on. Verse 12. For the reason that we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against principalities or rulerships, against powers or authorities, against the rulers of the darkness of this world, against spiritual wickedness in high places or in the heavenlies. Turn to Luke 24 real quick. So God pretty frequently throughout the scriptures makes a difference or differentiation between flesh and blood versus spirit. And usually it's in a positive kind, like in Romans, like don't walk after the flesh, but walk according to the spirit, this sort of thing. Well, in this case, it's a very negative connotation with spirit. However, they're still very, very different. Flesh and blood, it's something that you can touch, you can put your hands on. But Luke 24:39, this is Jesus speaking. Behold my hands and my feet, that it is I myself. Handle me and see, for a spirit hath not flesh and bones, as ye see me have. Go ahead and head back to Ephesians 6. So that's this idea that we're looking at. So again, you can do as many push-ups as you want, but it's not going to be the right kind of tools to take into war, because we don't battle against flesh and blood, but against spiritual wickedness in the high places. Verse 13. Wherefore take unto you the whole armor of God. Again, that's every single piece, that ye may be able to withstand in the evil day, and having done all, to stand. So the evil day, that's today, frankly. We know that the devil is the god of this world, and he does whatever he can to wreak havoc with all the mojo that he's got. That's his MO. So yes, we live in an age of grace, and it's incredible thanks to what Jesus Christ did for us, but the devil is the god of this world. So we're supposed to withstand in the evil day, and having done all, to literally hold your ground. Now we'll move forward, verses 14 through 17. Stand therefore, having your loins girt about with truth, and having on the breastplate of righteousness, and your feet shod with the preparation of the gospel of peace. Above all, taking the shield of faith, wherewith ye shall be able to quench all the fiery darts of the wicked, and take the helmet of salvation and the sword of the Spirit, which is the word of God. Okay, so the reason that God uses this sort of illustration is because different portions of armor have different functions, and it's something that we can empathize with because it's a physical thing, although we're dealing with spiritual matters. So the first item there, having your loins girt about with truth, in verse 14. So in the lands and the times of the Bible, men would frequently wear tunics, which is this long robe or like even dress-like garb, and that was restricting per se. So you get your loins girt about, you're hiking them up and you tie them around, and then all of a sudden your legs are exposed, you're more mobile, you're ready for action. You can go do manual labor or run into battle. Very fancy stuff. I'd like to do a physical demonstration with a towel next week, but that's fine. Having your loins girt about with truth. And the word identifies for us in a couple different areas what truth is. For example, Christ testified of himself, I am the way, the truth, and the life. He also said, let them be sanctified by thy truth. Thy word is truth. So we have a couple different ideas. And then earlier in the book of Ephesians, it also says, speaking the truth in love, as well as let no man lie, but speaking truth, every man with his neighbor. So this idea that not only truthfully, but with the idea of the word and with Christ, we are prepared to go into battle, prepared for every work that we do. We're agile with it. Next, still in verse 14, and having on the breastplate of righteousness. So, breastplate is a stationary piece of armor, right? It protects all your vital organs, your heart, your lungs, your stomach, and everything else in there. I don't know anatomy very well. That's what the breastplate does, and you can't really adjust it to be more or less effective. But righteousness in this case is a very stationary thing. Remember, before Christ, righteousness was after the law, but after Christ, we have the righteousness of God just through believing. Romans 10, 9, and 10, that if thou shalt confess with thy mouth that Jesus is Lord and believe in thy heart that God has raised him from the dead, thou shalt be saved. I'm going to run long on time. For with the heart man believes unto righteousness. So we have the righteousness of God. And it's a good thing because that means that it's God that's taking care of all of our vitals here. It's stationary, God's got it, it's going to be bulletproof. So, fortunately. Moving on, verse 15. And your feet shod with the preparation of the gospel of peace. So the gospel is this word that means like this good message, the good news, and peace. We have the peace of God with us now because of what Christ did. Now your feet shod is interesting. So you put the gospel of peace on your feet, meaning that everywhere that my foot touches down, I'm moving that message of the gospel of peace. Every single place that I step foot. What's next? Verse 16. Above all, most importantly, above any of these other things, taking the shield of faith, wherewith ye shall be able to quench all the fiery darts of the wicked. So the shield of faith, it's the word pistis, believing, which indicates action. The shield is also a portion of your armor that's mobile. You're supposed to apply it differently depending on which way your attacks are coming from, right? Let's pretend this is a shield. Applying it differently depending which way your attacks are coming from. I don't think we have time. But throughout the Gospels, many different times, Jesus will say, be it unto you according to thy believing, or thy believing has made thee whole. What is it? Mark 11, 22 and 23, have faith in God, have believing in God, for verily I say unto you, whosoever shall say unto this mountain, be taken up and cast into the sea, and believes in his heart that what he says shall come to pass, it will be done for him. That's this idea of believing, is that we apply it to different situations, and without fail, our believing, our action, how we move it, will quench all of the fiery darts of the wicked one. Verse 17, and take the helmet of salvation. So, helmets go on your head, as you might imagine. I'm sure all of us have worn one at some point, I hope, at least while riding bikes. Your helmet protects your dome, your computer, command central, the most important part of your body. Like breastplate of righteousness protects all those vitals. Helmet of salvation protects command central. So, this is important also because salvation is thanks to God. Remember earlier in Ephesians it says, by grace you are saved, not of works, lest any man should boast. Like it's the gift of God. That's what we're handling here. So if all else fails, you have that salvation from God that's protecting command central. So just like the righteousness of God, that salvation, both of those are totally bulletproof, and they're both completely stationary in protecting what is physically our most important parts. And here's my favorite part. Okay. And the sword of the Spirit, which is the Word of God. It's the only offensive part of the armor. And similar to the shield of faith, it's also mobile. And we've seen it in application similarly in Jesus Christ's earthly life and ministry. How it's 40 days and 40 nights. He's in the wilderness being tempted of the devil. He's hungry. You know how it is. And the devil greets him. He's like, hey, man, if you're really the Son of God, turn those stones into bread. And he's like, hey, man, if you're really the Son of God, just toss yourself off the temple. God's got you. He'll send angels, all that jazz. And he's like, hey, man, I'm just saying, I'm going to give you all this cool stuff. All you got to do is bow down and worship me. Simple. And every time, to every different temptation, Jesus Christ applied the word differently. He always started his response with a singular phrase, it is written. He had studied the word and he knew the word and was able to counter and apply the word to each different situation as it came. Same thing as our believing, that's a mobile unit of the armor. The sword of the Spirit, or the Word of God, is also mobile, and we apply it to every situation as they come along. So, we'll get more into it in coming weeks, but that's my talk for now.
All right.